The following is an excerpt from Lyddie by Catherine Patterson. The 4:30 bell clanged the house awake. From every direction Lyddie could hear the shrill voices of girls calling to one another, even singing. Someone on another floor was imitating a rooster. From the other side of the bed, Betsy groaned and turned over, but Lyddie was up, dressing quickly in the dark as she had always done in the windowless attic of the inn. Her stomach rumbled, but she ignored it. There would be no breakfast until 7, and that was 2.5 hours away. By 5, the girls had crowded through the main gate, jostled their way up outside the staircase on the far end of the mill, cleaned their machines, and stood waiting for the workday to begin. "Not too tired this morning?" Diane asked by way of greeting. Lyddie shook her head. Her feet were sore, but she had felt more tired after a day behind the plow. "Good. Today will be something more strenuous, I fear. We'll work all 3 looms together, all right? Until you feel quite sure of everything." Lyddie felt a bit as though the older girls were whispering in church. It seemed almost that quiet in the great loom room. The only real noise was the creaking from the ceiling of the letter belts that connected the wheels to the weaving room to the gigantic water wheel in the basement. The overseer came in, nodded good morning, and pushed a low wooden stool under a cord dangling from the assembly of wheels and belts above his head. His little red mouth pursed. He stepped up on the stool and pulled out his pocket watch. At the same moment, the bell in the tower above him shifted from a silent loose to a tight pulley, and suddenly all the 100 or so silent looms, in raucous concert, shuddered and groaned into fearsome life. Lyddie's first full day as a factory girl had begun. Within 5 minutes, her head felt like a log being split to splinters. She kept shaking it, as though she could rid of the noise, or at least the pain, but both seemed to grow more intense. If that weren't trial enough, a few hours of standing in her proud new boots and her feet had swollen so that the laces cut into her flesh. She bent down quickly to loosen them, and when she found the right lace was knotted, she nearly burst into tears, or perhaps the tears were caused by the swirling dust and lint. Now that she thought of it, she could hardly breathe. The air was so laden with moisture and debris. She snatched a moment to run to the window. She had to get air, but the window was nailed shut against the April morning. She leaned her forehead against it. Even the glass seemed hot. Her apron brushed the pots of red geraniums crowding the windowsill. They were flourishing in this hot house. She coughed, trying to free her throat and lungs for breath. "I stared down a black bear," Lyddie reminded herself. She took a deep breath, fished out the broken ends, and began to tie the weaver's knot that Diana had shown her over and over again the afternoon before. Finally, Lyddie managed to make a clumsy knot, and Diana pulled the lever, and the loom shuddered to life once more. How could she ever get accustomed to this inferno? Even when the girls were set free at 7, it was to push and shove their way across the bridge and down the street to their boarding houses, bolt down their hearty breakfast, and rush back, stomachs still churning, for ring-in at 7:35. Nearly half the mealtime was spent simply going up and down the staircase, across the mill yard and bridge, down the row of houses, just getting to and from the meal. And the din in the dining room was nearly as loud as the racket in the mill. 30 young women chewing and calling at the same time, reaching for the platters of flapjacks and pitchers of syrup, ignoring cries from the other end of the table to pass anything. At last the evening bell rang, and Mr. Marsden pulled the cord to the end of the day. Diana walked with her to the place by the door where the girls hung their bonnets and shawls, and handed Lyddie hers. "Let's forget about studying those regulations tonight," she said. "It's been too long a day already." She lost all appetite. The very smell of supper made her nauseous. Beans heavy with pork fat, and brown bread with orange cheese, fried potatoes, of course, and flapjacks with applesauce, baked Indian pudding with cream cake for dessert. Lyddie nibbled at the brown bread and washed it down with the scalding tea. How could the others eat so heartily, and with such a clatter of dishes and shrieks of conversation? She longed only to get to the room, take off her boots, massage her abused feet, and lay down her aching head. While the other girls pulled their chairs from the table and scraped them about to form little circles in the parlor area, Lyddie dragged herself from the table and up the stairs. End reading.